Tak-1 stood at attention in the briefing room, his scales shifting from green to a dull gray. The color change always happened when he felt annoyed, and right now, he was very annoyed. The holographic display in front of him showed his new assignment, and he read it 3 times, hoping he had misunderstood. "Human Expeditionary Force?" he said to the Admiral. "Sir, I respectfully request clarification." The Admiral, an elderly Christian with battle scars across his snout, looked tired. "You heard correctly, Commander. You will join the 7th Strike Battalion as an embedded observer. We need experienced officers to assess human combat effectiveness." Tak-1's tail twitched. Everyone in the Galactic Coalition knew about humans. They had joined the war against the Voidborn 6 months ago, and the reports were troubling, not because they were losing, but because of how they fought. Reckless, emotional, unpredictable. 3 Christian observers had already requested transfers away from human units, citing cultural incompatibility and unnecessary risk-taking. "Sir, my record shows 43 successful operations. I have trained for 15 years in proper military doctrine. Surely there are better uses for my skills than babysitting primitives who barely understand formations." The Admiral's eyes narrowed. "That attitude is exactly why you are going, Commander. The humans have retaken 4 systems we wrote off as lost. They have held positions we calculated were indefensible. They have done this with inferior technology and smaller numbers. We need to understand how. You leave in 6 hours." The dismissal was clear. Tak-1 saluted and left, his claws clicking against the metal floor. In his quarters, he packed his equipment with sharp, angry movements. Humans, the galaxy's newest species, only 200 years into space travel. They still fought with chemical propellants and physical armor. Their ships were slow. Their soldiers died easily. But they kept coming back, kept fighting, kept refusing to understand when they were beaten. The transport to the human forward base took 3 days. Tak-1 spent the time reviewing files. The Voidborn were winning the war before humans arrived. The insectoid swarm consumed everything, turning whole planets into hive worlds. Coalition forces fought with precision and strategy, trading space for time, calculating acceptable losses. Then the humans showed up and started doing things that made no tactical sense. Counterattacks, when they should retreat. Holding ground, when they should withdraw. Attacking enemies twice their size with what could only be called enthusiasm. The transport docked at Forward Base Jericho. The name was human, some reference to an ancient battle. Tak-1 stepped off the ramp and immediately noticed the noise. Music played from somewhere. Soldiers laughed and shouted. Someone was singing badly. This was a military base, 3 jumps from an active war zone, and it sounded like a festival. A human approached him, wearing an officer's insignia. He was shorter than Tak-1, with dark hair graying at the temples, and a face marked by old scars. His eyes were sharp and carried something Tak-1 recognized from veteran warriors. This one had seen real combat. "Commander Tak-1," the human said, pronouncing the name carefully. "I'm Commander Byung-ho." They clasped hands in the human greeting. Byung-ho's grip was firm, his skin warm compared to Tak-1's scales. He smiled, showing teeth, and Tak-1 tried not to see it as the threat gesture it would be in Christian culture. "Your quarters are ready?" Byung-ho said, leading the way through the base. "We ship out in 18 hours. Station Karis 9 fell to the Voidborn 3 days ago. We're taking it back." Tak-1's professional interest pushed through his prejudice. "Intelligence estimates for enemy strength." Enemy. 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 Approximately 1,500 Voidborn warriors, standard hive defense configuration. We're sending 400 soldiers. 400 against 1,500? Tak-1 stopped walking. "Those odds are unacceptable. Request reinforcements or delay the operation." Byung-ho turned, and his smile grew wider. It was not a comforting expression. "Commander, those aren't bad odds. That's 3-1. We've worked with worse. Besides, the longer we wait, the more they dig in. Speed is our advantage." Before Tak-1 could respond, another human jogged up to them. This one was female, with her hair tied back and sergeant's stripes on her armor. She had a casual energy that seemed inappropriate for someone about to enter combat. "Commander," she said to Byung-ho, then looked at Tak-1. "This our observer? Hey, I'm Sergeant Hae-jin. You're with my squad tomorrow." "Tomorrow?" Tak-1 felt his scales shifting colors again. "Should we not spend time reviewing tactics? Coordinating approaches? I do not even know your squad's combat specifications." Tak-1. 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 Tak-1 felt his scales shifting colors specifications. Hae-jin laughed. "It's simple. Things show up. We shoot them. If we run out of bullets, we use grenades. If we run out of grenades, we use knives. If we run out of knives, we use rocks. If we run out of rocks, we use our hands. You'll pick it up fast." She walked away, still laughing. Byung-ho patted Tak-1's shoulder, another gesture that felt too familiar. "Don't worry. Hae-jin's squad has an 87% survival rate. That's above average." "Above average," Tak-1 repeated quietly. The implication meant some squads had much lower survival rates, yet the humans kept fighting, kept smiling, kept joking. That night, Tak-1 lay in his quarters listening to the sounds of the human base. Somewhere, soldiers sang drinking songs. Someone told a story that ended in roaring laughter. These were people about to enter a death trap, and they acted like they were going to a celebration. He pulled up the mission briefing again. Station Keras 9, 1,500 Voidborn, 400 humans. The math was simple. Many of these laughing soldiers would be dead in 2 days. They had to know this. They had to understand the odds. Yet they sang anyway. Tak-1 closed his eyes and tried to sleep. Tomorrow he would see what human combat really looked like. Tomorrow he would understand why 3 observers had requested transfers. Tomorrow the true horror would begin, though he did not yet know that the horror would not be what he expected. The dropship shook as it entered the atmosphere of Station Keras 9's planetary anchor. Tak-1 gripped his harness, watching the humans around him. They should have been preparing mentally for combat. They should have been checking weapons in tense silence. Instead, they were singing, "We're going down to die today, die today, die today." They sang together. Voices rough but enthusiastic. "We're going down to die today, and take them with us." Hae-jin sat across from him, checking her rifle with practiced ease. She caught his stare and grinned. "It's an old song. Helps with the nerves." "You are nervous?" Tak-1 asked. The humans showed no signs of fear. "Terrified," she said casually. "Always am. Means I'm still sane." She slapped the soldier next to her on the shoulder. "Right. Dongwoo?" Dongwoo was a broad man with scars on his hands and a tattoo of some earth creature on his neck. He looked up from the grenade he was priming. "Fear keeps you sharp. No fear means you're stupid, or you're about to do something really stupid." He paused. "Usually both." The pilot's voice crackled through the comm. 30 seconds to drop zone. Anti-air fire detected. It's going to be rough." The singing stopped. The humans locked their helmets on, checked each other's gear with quick efficiency. The casual atmosphere vanished, replaced by something cold and focused. Tak-1 realized he had been seeing only one side of them. The dropship lurched violently. Alarms screamed. Something exploded close enough to rattle Tak-1's teeth. "We're hit," the pilot shouted. "Losing altitude. Adjust landing zone. Scatter pattern alpha." "Copy that." Byung-ho's voice came through the squad channel. "All units. Original rally point is compromised. Execute independent insertion and converge on objective." "Acknowledged?" A chorus of "Yes, sir," filled the comm. The humans did not sound panicked. They sounded annoyed, like this was an inconvenience rather than a disaster. The dropship hit hard. TAC 1 stumbled as the ramp dropped open, and suddenly they were in hell. The station interior was dark, except for emergency lights, and the green bioluminescence of void-borne corruption. The walls themselves seemed alive, covered in the organic matter the swarm used to reshape captured territory. "Move! Move!" Heijin shouted, and the squad poured out. 8 humans, and 1 very uncertain Crescent officer. They made it 20 meters before the Voidborn found them. The creatures came from everywhere at once. Warrior forms, each one as tall as TAC 1, covered in black chitin armor, and wielding limbs that ended in blades. The Crescent military doctrine for Voidborn warrior forms was simple: maintain distance, use concentrated fire, never allow melee engagement. The humans charged forward. TAC 1 froze for half a second, his training warring with his instincts. In that half second, he saw things that would haunt him. Dongwu fired his rifle until it clicked empty, then used it as a club to smash a warrior form's head. A young soldier named Youngsik slid under a warrior's strike and stabbed upward with a combat knife, finding the weak point in its neck joint. Mireille, the squad's medic, shot a warrior in the eyes at point-blank range while screaming what had to be curses in her language. And Heijin fought like a demon from ancient Crescent mythology. She moved through the Voidborn like water, each movement ending in death. Her rifle barked continuously. When a warrior knocked it from her hands, she drew a pistol. When the pistol emptied, she drew a knife. When a warrior's blade cut her arm, she barely noticed. TAC 1 finally moved. His rifle came up, and he fired in controlled bursts like he had been trained. His shots were precise, effective, safe. The human's shots were surgical strikes of barely controlled chaos. A warrior form appeared behind him. TAC 1 did not see it. Mireille did. She tackled him sideways, and the blade that would have split his skull instead cut through the air. She rolled to her feet, planted 3 shots in the warrior's chest, and was back in formation before TAC 1 could even thank her. The fight lasted maybe 3 minutes. It felt like hours. When the last warrior fell, TAC 1 looked around at the carnage. 14 Voidborn dead, 8 humans standing, though several were bleeding. The math should not have worked. The humans were outnumbered nearly 2 to 1. Surprised. In an ambush situation, they had won. Casualties? Heijin asked, already moving to check her squad. "I'm good," Youngsik said, though his armor showed claw marks. "Peachy," Dongwu said. Then he looked down at his left arm, which was hanging at a wrong angle. Blood soaking his sleeve. "Oh. That's not great." Mireille was there immediately, pulling out medical supplies. She cut away Dongwu's sleeve, revealing a deep cut that exposed bone. TAC 1 felt his stomach turn. This was a critical injury. Dongwu needed immediate evacuation. "Can you seal it?" Dongwu asked calmly. Mireille nodded. "It's going to hurt. Always does." She pulled out a medical torch, the kind used for emergency cauterization. Dongwu bit down on a piece of leather from his belt. Mireille fired the torch, and the smell of burning flesh filled the corridor. Dongwu made a sound deep in his throat but did not scream. The process took 30 seconds. When it was done, his arm was a mess of burnt tissue and synthetic skin seal. But the bleeding had stopped. "You need evacuation," TAC 1 said. "That injury requires surgery." Dongwu flexed his remaining good fingers, testing his grip. "I can still shoot. I can still throw grenades. I'm staying." He picked up his rifle with his good hand and checked the chamber. "Besides, who's going to tell the good jokes if I leave?" Heijin looked at Mireille, who nodded reluctantly. "He can fight. I'll monitor him." They moved deeper into the station. TAC 1 followed in a daze. Dongwu had just lost functional use of an arm, had been burned and cut and nearly killed, and he was cracking jokes. The humans treated massive trauma like a minor setback. They reached a defensible room that used to be a command center. Jin established fields of fire while Young Sik set up remote sensors. Mireille tended to everyone's wounds with quick efficiency. Dongwu started pulling apart equipment to make improvised explosives. Status? Byung-ho's voice came through the comm, crackling with static. Position secure, Jin reported. One serious casualty. Continuing mission. Enemy contact confirmed heavy. Request backup at objective. Negative on backup. Most squads scattered on landing. You're closest to the objective. Hold position. Reinforcements coming. But ETA, 18 hours. Can you hold? Jin looked at her squad. 7 humans and 1 alien. Against an entire station of Voidborn. 18 hours. It was impossible. Yes, sir, she said. We can hold. The comm clicked off. Young Sik laughed, though it sounded slightly hysterical. 18 hours. Sure. No problem. We've done worse, Dongwu said, attaching wires to an explosive charge with his one good hand. Remember Outpost 17? That was 3 days. Half of us died at Outpost 17, Mireille pointed out. But half of us didn't, Dongwu countered. Glass half full, Mireille. Glass half full. Tak-1 sat down heavily, his legs suddenly weak. He had been in combat before. He had seen death, but he had never seen anything like this. The humans were not brave. Brave implied the absence of fear. These humans were absolutely terrified. They were going to fight anyway. That was when Tak-1 began to understand. The horror was not the Voidborn. The real horror was sitting in this room with him, joking about death and preparing to hold an impossible position. The horror was that these fragile creatures with their soft skin and short lives had decided that giving up was simply not an option. The horror was humanity itself. The first wave hit 2 hours after they secured the command center. Tak-1 heard them before he saw them. A chittering sound that echoed through the metal corridors. The Voidborn did not sneak. They did not need to. They had numbers. Contact front, Young Sik said calmly, his finger tightening on the trigger. Lots of contact. The warriors came around the corner in a mass of claws and chitin. The humans opened fire. Tak-1 added his rifle to theirs, picking targets with careful precision. 1 shot. 1 kill. Efficient. Clean. The way he had been trained. The humans were different. They fired in bursts, sometimes at the same target, wasting ammunition by Christian standards. But warriors did not just fall. They exploded. They shattered. The humans were not trying to kill efficiently. They were trying to kill completely. The wave broke against their position. 20 Voidborn dead in the corridor. The humans checked their ammunition counts. 30% remaining, Jin said. We need to conserve. Or, Dongwu said, holding up one of his improvised bombs. We could make each shot count more. Dongwu said. We could make each shot count more. The second wave came an hour later. This time, Dongwu threw his explosive into the mass of warriors. The blast tore through chitin and flesh, and the wave broke before it reached their position. The humans cheered. The third wave came 30 minutes after that. The fourth wave came 20 minutes later. The fifth wave did not stop. They are learning, Tak-1 said, firing until his rifle overheated. They are timing the attacks to exhaust us. Good for them, Jin said. We're still here, but they were wearing down. Tak-1 could see it. The humans moved slower. Their shots were less accurate. Mireille had used most of her medical supplies, keeping everyone functional. Dongwu's injured arm hung useless at his side, and his face was pale from blood loss. But he kept fighting. Between waves, the humans did something Tak-1 did not expect. They talked. Young Sik pulled out a small device and showed pictures. My daughter, he said. She's 7. Wants to be a pilot like her dad. The picture showed a small human child with a bright smile. She is beautiful, Tak-1 said carefully, unsure of the proper response. She's a terror, Young-sik said with obvious pride. Gets it from her mother. My wife, she told me before I deployed. She said, you better come back because someone needs to handle this kid, and it's not going to be me. He laughed, but his eyes were wet. Heijin sat nearby, cleaning her rifle. My brother died on the first day of the war. Voidborn hit his colony ship. He was 17. She did not look up from her work. I joined the next day. Figured someone should pay them back. Revenge? Takwon asked. That is your motivation? Not revenge, she said quietly. Prevention. So no one else loses a 17-year-old kid who just wanted to see the stars. Dongwu was wrapping his injured arm tighter, wincing. I fight because I'm good at it. Found out during basic training that I have a talent for breaking things. Figured I should break things that need breaking. He grinned through his pain. Plus, the pay is decent. You joke, Takwon said. Always you joke. Even now. Surrounded. Low on ammunition. Injured. Why? Mireille answered from where she was checking their remaining medical supplies. Because, if we don't laugh, we'll cry. And crying doesn't kill Voidborn. Another wave hit. They held. Then another. And another. The night stretched on forever. Takwon's arms ached from holding his rifle. His eyes burned from staring into the darkness. But the humans kept fighting. At hour 12, they ran out of ammunition for the heavy weapons. At hour 14, they were down to pistols and rifles. At hour 16, Dongwu's last improvised bomb took out a dozen warriors, but also collapsed part of the corridor, cutting off one of their escape routes. We are trapped, Takwon said, staring at the rubble. We were always trapped, Heijin said. Now we're just more efficiently trapped. At hour 17, they heard a voice on the comm. It was Byung-ho. Heijin. Status? Still here, sir. Barely. Ammunition at 5%. Multiple casualties. We cannot hold another major push. You will not have to. I am coming to you. Sir. Negative. Your position is 3 kilometers away, through hostile territory. Then I better start running. Hold tight. Byung-ho out. The humans looked at each other. Then Young-sik started laughing. He's actually doing it. The crazy son of a gun is actually doing it. Of course he is, Mireille said. He's our commander. 20 minutes later, they heard fighting in the corridor. Not the chittering of Voidborn, but the sound of human weapon fire. Then an explosion. Then silence. Byung-ho came through the rubble covered in blood and gore, most of it not his own. He was carrying extra ammunition and fresh weapons. Behind him came 4 more soldiers, equally battered but alive. Sorry I'm late, Byung-ho said, distributing ammunition. Traffic was terrible. Takwon stared at him. You fought through 3 kilometers of Voidborn-held territory. Alone. I won. Not alone, Byung-ho corrected, gesturing to the 4 soldiers. We picked up stragglers along the way. Turns out lots of squads had the same idea. Converge on the objective. Hold the position. He looked at Heijin's squad, taking in their injuries and exhaustion. You did good. Real good. We just did the job, sir, Heijin said. No. Byung-ho said seriously. You did more than the job. You held when anyone else would have broken. You stayed when anyone else would have run. That's not just doing the job. That's being human. At hour 18, the reinforcements arrived. Fresh soldiers poured through the breach, pushing the Voidborn back. Medical teams evacuated the wounded. The battle for Station Keres 9 was not over, but this part was done. Takwon sat on the floor, his rifle across his lap, and watched the humans. They were helping each other stand, sharing water, making jokes about the smell. Young-sik was showing everyone pictures of his daughter again. Dongwu was asleep sitting up, his injured arm cradled carefully. Mireille was organizing the wounded for evacuation despite being wounded herself. And Hai-Jin stood with Byung-ho, looking at the corridor they had held. Tak-1 had seen Christian soldiers hold impossible positions before. But they did it through discipline and training and a cold acceptance of duty. The humans did it through something else. Something Tak-1 did not have a word for in his language. Later, in the medical transport back to base, a medic checked Tak-1 over. "You're lucky," the medic said. "Minor wounds only. Some bruising. You'll be fine." Tak-1 looked across the transport at Dongwu, who had finally been sedated for surgery on his ruined arm. At Young-sik, who was holding his daughter's picture, even in sleep. At Mireille, who had burned through her supplies keeping everyone alive. At Hai-Jin, who sat quietly staring at nothing. "Lucky," Tak-1 repeated. But he did not feel lucky. He felt like he had seen something that changed him. Something terrible and beautiful. He had seen humanity at war, and for the first time, he understood why the Voidborn should be afraid. Not because humans were strong, or smart, or well-armed, but because humans simply did not know when they were beaten. They fought when the odds said they should die. They held when logic said they should retreat. They laughed in the face of death and kept pushing forward. That was the true horror. Not that humans were monsters, but that they made monsters look reasonable by comparison. The Voidborn killed because it was their nature. Humans fought because they chose to. And that choice, that stubborn, insane, beautiful choice, made all the difference. The medical bay smelled of antiseptic and something else, something sweet that humans use to mask the smell of injury. Tak-1 had been there for 3 days, recovering from his wounds. Minor wounds, the doctors said. He would be fine. But fine was a relative term, when his sleep was filled with chittering sounds, and the memory of Byung-ho, covered in blood. On the 4th day, he went to visit Dongwu. The human was in physical therapy already, working with his new prosthetic arm. It was a basic military model, metal and carbon fiber, nothing fancy. Dongwu was trying to pick up a small ball with the mechanical fingers. "This is harder than it looks," Dongwu said when he noticed Tak-1. The ball dropped again. "My old arm didn't make me think so much about grabbing things. You should be resting," Tak-1 said. "Your injury was severe." 2. "Resting is boring," Dongwu said, trying again with the ball. "Besides, we ship out in 2 weeks. New mission. I need to be ready." This time, he caught the ball. He grinned like a child who had accomplished something wonderful. "See? Progress." Tak-1 sat down slowly. "You nearly died. You lost your arm. And you are preparing for another mission?" "Well, yeah," Dongwu said, as if this was obvious. "The war's not over. Still got Voidborn to fight. Still got people to protect." He flexed his new fingers. "Plus, I always wanted to try out one of these. I can adjust the grip strength. Watch." He picked up an empty metal cup and squeezed. The cup crumpled like paper. "Cool, right?" "You are insane," Tak-1 said quietly. "All of you. Insane." "Probably," Dongwu agreed cheerfully. "But we're the good kind of insane." Later, Tak-1 found Hai-Jin in the training room, running combat drills despite the healing wound on her arm. She moved through the exercises with the same intensity she had shown in actual combat. When she noticed him watching, she stopped and grabbed water. "Your wound has not fully healed," Tak-1 observed. "Healed enough," she said. "Can't let myself get slow." She sat down next to him, breathing hard. "You wanted to ask me something. I can tell." "Why?" Tak-1 asked. "Why do you fight like that? You are not stupid. You know the odds. You know many of you will die. Yet you keep volunteering for the worst missions. Keep pushing into situations that should kill you. Why?" Hai-Jin was quiet for a moment, considering her answer. "You know what the difference is between being brave and being fearless?" Tak 1 shook his head. Fearless means you don't feel the fear. Brave means you feel it and do it anyway. She looked at her hands, at the scars there. I'm terrified every single time. Every drop, every mission, every moment in combat. I'm scared I'll die. I'm scared my friends will die. I'm scared I'll fail someone who needs me. Then why not stop? Request a safer assignment? Your service is already honorable. She smiled, but it was sad. Because being scared and doing it anyway is the only thing that matters. My brother, the one I told you about? He was scared when the Voidborn came, but he helped get other kids to the escape pods before the ship went down. He was 17 and terrified, and he saved 20 lives. Her voice cracked slightly. That's what being human means. Being afraid and doing the right thing anyway. Tak 1 spent the next few days reading everything he could about human history. What he found disturbed him more than the combat had. Humans were not apex predators. They had been prey animals once, hunted by larger and stronger creatures. They survived by being persistent, by refusing to give up, by chasing prey for days until it collapsed from exhaustion. Their entire evolution was based on not knowing when to quit. He read about their wars. Thousands of years of killing each other over resources, territory, ideas. They had nearly destroyed themselves dozens of times, and somehow, they had turned all that violence into something useful when they reached the stars. Mireille found him in the library section of the base. She sat down without asking, looking at what he was reading. Human history, she said. That's pretty dark stuff. Your species is violent, Tak 1 said. We are, she agreed. We're also stubborn, creative, and really good at adapting. She pulled up her own screen, showing him biological data. Do you know what adrenaline is? Your emergency hormone. It increases strength and speed temporarily. Right. Most species have something similar, but humans produce more of it, and we have a higher tolerance for it. We can function on it longer. Then, there's our pain tolerance. We can keep fighting with injuries that would incapacitate most species, not because we don't feel the pain, but because we can choose to ignore it. We're endurance hunters. We evolved to chase prey for hours, days even. We're built for persistence. But that does not explain the psychological aspect, Tak 1 said. The jokes, the songs, the refusal to acknowledge when a situation is hopeless. Mireille laughed. That's called coping. Look, humans are social creatures. We bond through shared hardship, the jokes and songs and stories. That's how we tell each other, I'm here. You're not alone. We'll get through this together. It's not denial. It's acknowledgement. We know things are bad. We just refuse to let bad things define us. A week later, Tak 1 was cleared for duty. He expected reassignment to a Christian unit. Instead, Byung-ho called him to his office. We have new orders, Byung-ho said. Assault on Nexus Prime, the Voidborn Hive world. Tak 1 felt his scales shift color. Nexus Prime was a fortress. Every military strategist agreed it would take years to crack, and the casualties would be catastrophic. When do we leave? Tak 1 asked. Byung-ho looked surprised. You're staying? I assumed you would request transfer back to your people. I requested to stay with the 7th, Tak 1 said. If you will have me. For the first time, Byung-ho's smile reached his eyes. Of course. You're one of us now. That makes you family. Family. The concept did not translate well into Crescent. They had clans and units and social structures, but not this casual adoption of outsiders into their group. Yet Tak 1 found he understood it anyway. The next week was training. Tak 1 learned human tactics properly this time. Not just observing, but participating. He learned their songs, though his throat could not make some of the sounds. He learned their jokes, though he did not always understand the humor. He learned to accept that humans did not fight by the rules, because humans rewrote the rules as they went. One evening, the squad gathered for what they called a family dinner. Everyone contributed food from their home regions. Takwan had nothing to offer, but Heijin waved this off. You're here. That's contribution enough. They ate and talked and told stories. Young-sik showed new pictures of his daughter. Dongwoo demonstrated that he could now juggle with his prosthetic arm. Mireille talked about her plans after the war. A small clinic on a frontier world. Byung-ho told embarrassing stories about his early days in service. And Takwon listened. He watched these humans, who would soon fly into almost certain death. And they were laughing. They were making plans for after. They were being family. You finally get it, don't you? Heijin said quietly to him. Why we fight this way? I think so, Takwon said. You do not fight because you are fearless. You fight because you are afraid. Afraid of losing each other. Afraid of what happens if you fail. So you turn that fear into something else. Into this. Into love, Heijin said simply. We fight because we love. We love our families back home. We love our squad mates beside us. We love the idea of a universe where people can be safe. Love is stronger than fear. Always. That night, Takwon sent a message to the Admiral. He reported on human combat effectiveness. He explained their tactics, their psychology, their stubborn refusal to accept defeat. He ended with a recommendation that surprised even himself. Do not try to change them. Do not try to make them fight like us. Let them be human. Because humanity's greatest weapon is not their technology or their tactics. It is their absolute refusal to give up on what they love. The Voidborn should be terrified. I know I am, but it was a good kind of terror. The kind that came from standing next to something powerful and choosing to stand there anyway. The kind that came from joining a family that fought impossible odds together. Tomorrow they would leave for Nexus Prime. Many would not come back. But tonight, they were together. And that was enough. The fleet gathered above Nexus Prime like a storm preparing to break. 300 ships from a dozen species. All aimed at one world. The Voidborn Hive world looked like a diseased organ from space, covered in the organic structures the swarm built. It pulsed with sickly light, and even through the ship's hull, Takwon could feel its wrongness. The human assault carriers would lead the ground attack. Of course they would. When the call went out for volunteers to hit the surface, to go directly into the hive itself, the human response was overwhelming. They had to turn soldiers away. Takwon stood with his squad in the deployment bay. His squad now. Not the human squad he was observing. They had given him a patch to wear with their unit insignia. He had sewn it onto his armor himself. Big day, Dongwoo said, flexing his prosthetic hand. He had painted it with bright colors, claiming it made him easier to identify in combat. Takwon suspected he just liked the way it looked. The biggest. Young-sik agreed. He was looking at his daughter's picture again. He did that before every mission now. A ritual. We break their queen. We break their war machine. And if we do not break her? Takwon asked. Then we die trying. Mireille said practically. But we take as many of them with us as we can. Heijin checked everyone's gear one final time. Her movements were precise, almost ritualistic. She had done this hundreds of times before. Listen up, she said. This is not like Karis 9. This is their home territory. Every corridor is a trap. Every shadow might be a warrior. We go in, we hit the queen, we get out. Simple. Simple, Dongwoo repeated with a laugh. Sure, just like everything else we do. Byung-ho addressed all the assault teams over the comm. His voice was steady, carrying the weight of command but also something else. Pride. Maybe. Or love. Today, we end this war. Today we show the Voidborn that humanity does not surrender, that we do not break, that we are the nightmare that haunts their hive, You are the best soldiers I have ever known. It has been my honor to serve with you. See you on the other side." The drop was smooth compared to Karis 9. The fleet had cleared the air defenses, but as soon as they hit the ground, the real fight started. The hive was alive. The walls moved. The floors shifted. And everywhere, there were Voidborn. The squad pushed forward with a dozen other teams. The plan was to converge on the Queen's chamber from multiple angles. Half the teams would die before they got there. Everyone knew it. No one talked about it. They had been fighting for 2 hours when they hit the first major defense line. Voidborn warriors filled a massive chamber, hundreds of them, protecting the passage to the Queen's territory. Other human teams were already engaged, the fight brutal and chaotic. "We push through," Byung-ho ordered. He had joined their squad personally, leading from the front like always. No stopping. No slowing. "We break through, or we die trying." They charged. Tak-1 charged with them, his rifle firing continuously. He did not think about tactics anymore. He did not calculate odds. He simply fought, pressed forward by the humans around him, by his family. Young-sik went down in that chamber. A warrior blade caught him in the chest, tearing through armor and flesh. He fell, and Mireille screamed, trying to reach him, but Young-sik waved her off with a bloody hand. He pulled a grenade from his belt, held it close to his chest, and rolled toward a cluster of warriors. The explosion took out 5 of them. Young-sik's last act was to clear the path for his squad. They did not have time to mourn. They pushed forward, fighting through grief and rage. Tak-1 saw Mireille crying as she fired her rifle, saw Dongwoo's face twist into something terrifying as he smashed warriors with his prosthetic fist, saw Hae-jin become a cold, efficient killing machine, her emotions locked away until the mission was done. They reached the Queen's chamber through corridors that seemed designed to break their minds. The walls were covered in what looked like faces, the remains of creatures the Voidborn had consumed. The air was thick with spores that made breathing painful. But they kept moving. The Queen's chamber was vast, a cathedral of bone and chitin, and at its center, massive and terrible, was the Queen herself. She was 3 times the size of a warrior. Her body swollen with eggs, her mind a presence that pushed against their thoughts like a physical weight. Around her were the Queen's guard, elite warriors, each one a veteran of countless battles. There were 20 of them. Between all the human teams that had made it this far, maybe 40 soldiers remained. Byung-ho did not hesitate. Hit them with everything. Do not stop. Do not slow. This ends now. The fight was madness. Tak-1 would remember it only in flashes. The sound of gunfire echoing off organic walls. The sight of a Queen's guard tearing through 3 soldiers before being brought down. Mireille, injecting herself with combat stimulants, just to keep moving. Dongwoo, using his prosthetic arm to choke a guard to death when his weapons failed. And Hae-jin. Hae-jin fought like she had been born for this moment. She moved through the chamber, like death itself, every action precise, every shot finding its target. She was magnificent and terrible, but they were losing. Too many guards, too much area to cover. The Queen was recovering from their initial assault, her guard reforming around her. Tak-1 saw what needed to happen. There was a weak point, a spot where the Queen's armor did not fully cover her body, but reaching it required crossing 20 meters of open ground under fire from the remaining guards. It was suicide. He looked at Hae-jin, at Mireille, at Dongwoo, at Byung-ho, his family, the humans who had taught him what it meant to fight not because you had to, but because you chose to. "Cover me," Tak-1 said, and he ran. He heard them shouting behind him, heard their weapons firing to keep the guards occupied, felt something tear through his leg, but he did not stop, could not stop. He had learned from the humans. You did not stop until the mission was done. He reached the Queen, leaped, drove his knife into that weak point with all his strength. The queen screamed. A sound that shook the chamber. Her guard turned toward him, and Tak-1 knew he would die here. Then Byung-ho and Ha-jin were there. They had followed him across that impossible ground. Together, the three of them drove their weapons deeper, tearing through the queen's flesh until they reached something vital. The queen's screams became gurgles. Her massive body convulsed. The eggs, Byung-ho gasped, covered in the queen's blood. We have to destroy the eggs. I have it, Dong-woo called. He had made it to the egg chamber, was setting charges with his one good hand and his prosthetic working together. 30 seconds. We need to move. The hive will collapse when the queen dies, Mireille said. We need to evacuate everyone. There's no time, Byung-ho said quietly. He looked at the surviving soldiers, then at the charges Dong-woo was setting. Someone needs to make sure those charges detonate, and someone needs to trigger the reactor to ensure this whole facility goes. Sir, no, Ha-jin said. We can find another way. There is no other way, Byung-ho said. He smiled. That same smile he had shown Tak-1 on his first day with the humans. This is what we do. This is what it means to be human. You protect the people who come after you. He turned to Tak-1. Tak-1 wanted to argue, wanted to refuse, but he understood now. This was the price. This was what humanity paid for their victories. They burned bright and fast, sacrificing themselves so others could live. It has been my honor, Tak-1 said, saluting properly for the first time. The honor was mine, Byung-ho replied. Now go. They ran. The chamber was collapsing, the queen's death throes bringing down the organic structure. Tak-1 half-carried Mireille, whose leg was broken. Dong-woo and Ha-jin covered their retreat, firing at pursuing warriors until their ammunition ran out, then using knives and fists. They made it to the extraction point with seconds to spare. The dropship lifted as the hive began to tear itself apart. Through the window, Tak-1 saw Nexus Prime's surface crack open, saw fire and destruction spread from where Byung-ho had triggered the reactor. The fleet reported complete success. The queen was dead. The hive was destroyed. The Voidborn's war machine had been broken. Humanity had won. But in the dropship, no one celebrated. They sat in silence, thinking about Young-sik and his daughter, who would grow up without a father, thinking about Byung-ho, who had given everything so they could escape. A month later, Tak-1 stood before a memorial wall at the human base. It listed the names of all the soldiers who had died in the war. Thousands of names. And near the bottom, fresh additions. Young-sik, Byung-ho, so many others. Ha-jin stood beside him. She touched Byung-ho's name gently, her fingers tracing the letters. He told me once, she said quietly, that the measure of a soldier is not how they fight. It's what they fight for. He fought for us. For everyone who came after. He fought for everyone who came after. He fought for of a soldier. The takes as a big zis with the Tak-1 had been given a new assignment. The coalition wanted him to train other species in human tactics, to spread the lessons he had learned. I do not know if I can teach this, he said to Ha-jin. How do you teach someone to fight like a human? To be that brave? That stubborn? That willing to sacrifice? You don't teach the tactics, Ha-jin said. You teach the why. Why we fight. Why we don't give up. Why we choose to stand when standing seems impossible. She looked at him. You understand it now. I can see it. You fought like one of us. You chose to stay when you could have left. You made the impossible run because it was right. I learned from the best, Tak-1 said. He would spend the rest of his life teaching others what humanity had shown him. That true strength was not the absence of fear, but the choice to act despite it. That family was not blood, but bonds forged in fire. That sometimes the right thing to do was the hardest thing to do. He would teach them about a commander who smiled at death, about a sergeant who fought for her lost brother, about a soldier who juggled to make his friends laugh, about a medic who gave everything to keep others alive. He would teach them about humanity, and he would make sure they understood the truth he had learned in blood and fire and sacrifice. The true horror was not fighting alongside humanity. The true horror was fighting against them, because humans did not know how to lose. They only knew how to keep fighting until they won, or until there was nothing left to fight with. And even then, they would find something more to give.